guys, welcome back to Book Talk with Meg. My name is Megan for those of you who don't know. Hi, welcome, hope you stick around. If you decide to, do not forget to click the subscribe button down below. It'll notify you when I upload new videos. Hope you guys have been doing well and that you've been reading a bunch because for a lot of us, school is basically back, so our time to read might not be as much, but still, hope you guys are doing great with your yearly TBRs. Today I'm here to talk about some of my favorite contemporaries, which I think are underhyped. Some of these are more romancy, some deal with more heart-wrenching aspects. I tried to make it broad so that, a little bit of something could apply to everyone watching this video. Keeping in mind this is what I believe is underhyped. They are not my all-time favorite contemporaries, but those I enjoy that not a lot of people talk about or have talked about on BookTube before. So without further ado, let's hop on in. You guys leave me a comment down below telling me what your most underhyped books, doesn't have to be contemporary, are, so that I can try to branch out my reading as well. The first book I want to talk about is Rules of Summer by Joanna Philbin. A little disclaimer for this book before I forget, don't read the sequel. I wasn't aware until, I believe it was last summer, that there was a sequel to this book and it was absolute trash. This book ends pretty well. It could have been a standalone. The second book I believe is since last summer and it was not necessary at all. I just think it screwed up the characters and I just felt bitter after it. So if you guys want to enjoy this, read this and only this, unless you really feel the need to read the second book. This book follows our main character named Rory McShane, and she basically takes the train to East Hampton to work for this family which is called The Rules, and the Rules are basically a very wealthy family and Rory is kind of like the errand girl for them for the summer. When she meets all the staff and crew which works at the house, they basically tell her watch out for their son because he's a flirt and you don't want to get involved with him, obviously, because you are staff and he is kind of that step above you where it's off limits, and obviously all goes to crap because she starts talking to him. We also follow Isabel, who is one of the wealthy members of the family, who's obviously this boy's sister, and she is dating a guy which her parents would never approve of, and she kind of starts talking to Rory and they spend the whole summer together, and she kind of brings her into the world that is dating, and obviously conflict ensues because Rory has feelings for her brother and that's not okay there. And I loved the family dynamics. I loved how a lot of this book concentrated on how family is not perfect and the standards that your family can have for you and the pathway that they can have. I loved the drama because obviously this is a really big summer read, probably the most summery out of all of them. It involves the beach, it involves romance. I like the writing, it's fast paced, there's always something going on. It's a lot of drama, but I really like this, and it's the type of book that I would reread. The next book I've talked about on my channel before, and it is My Life Next Door by Huntley Fitzpatrick. Since I read this book a few years back, Huntley Fitzpatrick has become an auto-buy author for me. This book follows Samantha Reed, our main character, who lives with her mother, who is a politician. She is very organized, very strict. Her life is based and followed by a lot of rules, and her next door neighbors, the Garretts, are kind of like the polar opposite of her family. They're dysfunctional, unorganized, and very off limits by Samantha's mother, and obviously our wonderful Samantha falls for James Garrett, and she has to keep the entire relationship private from her mother because her mom would not accept this relationship, and it's about a lot of family, which is basically why I love this book. I love the Garretts, I love how honest it is, how fantastically it portrays family, how there's a lot of imperfections, how each family is different, and how the bond of family makes life so much different, how sometimes it's hard to deal with your parents when you're young. There was a lot of realistic things that applied which are not usually shown in YA books. I feel like sometimes in YA romances the family is just like never there, but this is extremely present in this book, which is, in my opinion, why it's so different. I like how the parents actually have rules and how they show the struggle when you're young and in love. And that is basically why I really love this book. This is an older book, but I really, really, really enjoy it. Another book I've talked about on my channel, but a little bit less, is Let's Get Lost by Adi Al-Sadi. And he's written a new release that I want to pick up as well, but this book follows our character Layla, and she is on a road trip to see the Northern Lights, and along the way she meets 4 different characters. The first one is called Hudson, and he is a small town mechanic, and they meet, and every time she meets someone, it's a small encounter because obviously she's on a road trip, but they change their lives. Hudson is a small town mechanic, then she meets Bree, who is a runaway. She also meets Elliot, who really believes in happy endings, but his life is kind of gone off track, as well as Sonia, who has lost her boyfriend and at the same time thinks she has lost her capacity to love again. And our main character kind of makes each character realize things and grows, and our main character grows as well through this trip, realizing that maybe the destination is not the most important part. And this, honestly, out of all the contemporaries I've read, which is a lot, is definitely my favorite coming of age story out of all the contemporaries I've read. This was beautifully written, it had me laughing, it had me crying. I wanted to know what happened to the characters after, and I found that even though our characters were well constructed from the start, by the end of the book they were completely different, and I fell in love with the characters at every page. I recommend this book to everyone. I love the road trip, I love the characters, the writing is beautiful. I just think there's so much more to this book than the YA tropes and cliches. This book is definitely an eye-opener, and it is a very different YA in my opinion. A beautiful contemporary that doesn't really, like, it focuses more on friendship than on romance. There's a little bit, but it's not the main plot. So for those of you guys who like contemporaries that involves other things than romance, this one is perfect for you. The next book I talked about recently, and that is The End of Our Story by Meg Hatton. This book I read while on vacation, and literally on page 3 I was bawling my eyes out. It was so poignant in my opinion. This book follows Bridge and Will. Bridge moves to Florida when she is a young child and hangs out with Will, and they kind of grow up together and always hang out together, and when they grow older form a romance. They are very close to each other and each other's families until Bridge, in her junior year I believe, kind of does something to Will, and it breaks up their friendship, their relationship. This is not a spoiler, it's like on the black blurb of this book. And then in their senior year, I believe, Will has some issues with his family, and they kind of become close again, but it has to do with how much you can have changed in a year, all the secrets that you thought you knew about someone that you actually don't, and how relationships change, and it's not always easy to come back together. This deals with so many important points. I don't want to spoil the book by talking about them, but this is not just a lovey-dovey contemporary. I cried in this book. It talks about family, about abuse. It is, like, this should be said, there is some discussion of abuse, so if it's something that triggers you, it might not be the best idea. But this book was everything I needed. It was beautiful. I loved the bond between the daughter and her family, and Will and his dad, and Bridget and Will's dad, and just everything, and how not everything is as it seems. It was a very realistic book. I really enjoy this, and I think definitely it is a new release. It came out in 2017, but I don't think enough people have been talking about this book. It is very different. The next book I have is Second Chance Summer by Morgan Matson, and you are probably like, Morgan Matson is super popular. This is obviously not an unhyped book. First, it is probably her book that less people have a tendency to pick up because it says to be sad, which is completely true. This follows our main character, Taylor Edwards, and Taylor has a tendency to run away with problems and never actually face them, until one day her family drops the bomb that her dad sadly has stage 4 cancer. and that means that Taylor is going to lose her dad. So her family decides to spend one last summer at their cottage, which they used to go to before, where Taylor has left her crush, her ex-best friend, and a lot of other things that she ran away from, and this is her second chance at making things right. I bawled my eyes out with this book. This has to do with family, and that again is the aspect that I love, because I feel like a lot of contemporaries leave out family, and to me it is a crucial part of a story. This is beautiful, it is heart-wrenching, it is very truthful. I think that everyone has something to learn from the main character and the struggle. I love that it has to do with summertime. I love that it has to do with friendships, relationships, and how to cope with things that aren't going right. I feel like a lot of times contemporaries involve something like, oh, a little boy, like a boy broke my heart and that's it, but this is about sickness, it's about family, it's about making right what you believe is wrong, and it was beautiful. My sister, who never reads, read this book, stayed up till 3 in the morning crying because it was such an emotional read. I just love this book very dearly. So those are my book recommendations for contemporaries that, in my opinion, are underhyped. If you guys want a part 2 to this video, let me know in the comments or thumbs this video up and I'll be sure to do it. And on that note, happy reading, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye guys!